Patriots fans, have we seen the end of the fullback in Foxboro? Lots to talk about today on that subject. Jakob Johnson, Dalton Keene, and a whole host of others may end up taking on that role in 2022. I'm Mike Debate, and you are about to be locked in to the Locked On Patriots podcast.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxboro faithful, and thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. Most of all, thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen every day. Proudly found here on YouTube, all over the Twitterverse, all over your podcast platforms. The Locked On Podcast Network is free and available on all platforms, so make sure to download, subscribe, and follow Locked On Patriots wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't done so already, smash that subscribe button because we're now live on YouTube. I'm your host, Mike Debate. I cover your New England Patriots for Patriot Maven of Sports Illustrated. I am also your host of Locked On. If you want to reach out to me, interact with me, let me know what's on your mind, reach out to me on the Bird app at MDABATE NFL. And while you're out there showing some Wednesday wisdom to the Twitterverse, please be sure to follow the Locked On Patriots account as well at LO_Patriots. And of course, today is Wednesday, and that means we at Locked On Patriots are proud, honored, and esteemed to welcome the Empress of Tight Endage, the Queen of TE, the Baroness of Blockers, the Principal of Positivity, the Countess of Claz herself, the one and only illustrious Clare ClazzyClare Cooper. Clare, thank you for joining us today from across the pond. Thank you for bringing your wisdom and counsel as a columnist extraordinaire for PatsPropaganda. And of course, folks, I say this every single week. Also, smash the subscribe button to A Clare Perspective, a podcast, one of the best Patriots podcasts out there. You definitely want to subscribe to this, folks. You will not be disappointed. Clare, welcome back to your weekly seat here on Locked On Patriots.
Oh, well, thank you. As always, it's great to be back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel that it's great to be back. We love having you back here. I told you that yesterday, last week. We've kind of gone into this, Wednesday routine here on Locked On Patriots to bring your wisdom and counsel in is kind of the virtue that lies in the middle, the straw that stirs the drink of the show. We have the tumult at the beginning of the week, and Steve comes in and lends his voice of reason, but you kind of even everything out and get us ready for the weekend. So you know what? I could not think of a better seat. I could not think of a better way to spend my Wednesday than talking football with you, my esteemed friend and colleague.
Thank you.
Clare, there's a lot to get to today in our show, and we will get to it all, folks. It's definitely going to be a fun show, I think, for you. We're going to talk fullbacks. We're going to talk tight endage. Clare loves that when we do that. There's a lot to digest with that because the Patriots may be losing a key position, not just a key player, but the key position in their arsenal. Or are they? Well, I'll tell you what. We will get back to that in a moment. But Clare, first off, one of the big pieces of news that's come out of Foxboro in the last couple of days was the re-signing of Trent Brown. We now know that Trent will be back in New England on a 2-year deal. Details of the contract were released yesterday. Can make up to $22 million. But a lot of that is going to be incentive-based. Not a lot of money uploaded early on into this contract for Trent. So a good move for the New England Patriots financially, but most importantly, all of us fans here in New England, we're wondering what this is going to mean for the Patriots on the field. And to me, that's where this really comes alive. You're a student of offense. You're a student of blockers. You love your tight endage. But the offensive line is something that you've really, honed in terms of lending your expertise, not just in your writing, but also in your podcast as well. What's your reaction to Trent Brown's re-signing here in New England? What do you think it means for that offensive line coming up in 2022?
Well, ultimately, it was a good thing. The concern was it was ever so slightly, possibly a panic thing. I mean, the key with Brown is remaining healthy. He's a big guy and he makes a really decent impact on the offensive line. We know this. particularly after the loss of Ted Karras. Brown is familiarity, he's consistency, he's stability, and as long as he remains on the field, and that is dependent on him remaining healthy. I mean, 2019 Brown had maybe his ultimate season for the Raiders. He allowed only one sack, but then with the COVID and there was an accident with an IV being inserted incorrectly, forcing air into his bloodstream and things like this, he was placed on IR. Obviously, this was previously to the Patriots, but just sort of reflecting back on the year that he had in 2019, it was a good year for him. Ultimately, until that issue. He came to the Patriots for the 2021 season, but he suffered a calf injury week 1, as pretty sure most people probably remember, and it caused a real domino effect for the offensive line. The early season games saw a perpetual carousel of offensive linemen, and I think the lack of solidity isn't great for anyone, let alone a rookie quarterback who's finding his feet. Now, granted, Mac is now on his second year, but you're still talking about a young quarterback who is enveloping into the system. I mean, I went back through and looked at lists in regard to the fluctuation of the O-line. I was really interested when I knew that we were going to be kind of discussing this topic. And when I looked at the kind of like the game, the playbook as such that was out there, the Texans game looked scary on paper when you read it. When you just read back on the notes, because of the O-line, it was Haran, it was Ferenz, it was Just with Durant switching back in. I mean, they had Karras and they had Andrews being like the saving graces. Now, I mean this as no disrespect to those guys that I have just named off, but they really aren't the elite of O-linemen. And with a rookie quarterback learning the system and all that, the Patriots needed more. And that's why I'm surprised in regards to the letting go of Karras. I mean, I know we're talking Trent Brown resigning here, but I just think it's an important factor in regards to the offensive line that the loss of it is as important as the signing of Trent Brown. I personally think that those are two pieces that the Patriots should be bringing back in 2022 anyway. I mean, there's no point in crying over spilt milk now. Karras is gone. And I get that. It's just that the letting Karras go to leave for better money, and then the trade away of Shaq Mason for kind of a 5th round pick, making holes that they sort of initially maybe didn't need to make. I mean, the signing of Brown is key, and it's kind of key not only because it's key to maintain that player, it's kind of key to maintain that player because of the players that they have ultimately lost in regards to that. And I mean, it's diluted the offensive line and created a weakness that I think maybe wasn't necessary. And I've got to admit, I'm not much of a negative person, but that does have me a little bit worried at this stage. Now, you guys all know me. I'm not for the negative. I'm not for the sky is falling in kind of jam. It's not me. I just have my reservations at the moment. But I mean, it's a long way till September. There's so much kind of to go in between. It's just, I look at the caliber of the guys that they've lost and feel a little bit of a concern that they're not going to be easily replaced. I really hope I'm proved wrong. But there is still plenty that has to happen before the guys take the field anyway, as mentioned, free agency in the draft. So training camp and, the revolving door of tryouts. So it's kind of we shall see what is to transpire.
Absolutely. I think you make some interesting points, especially about the trade away of Shaq Mason, the defection now, I guess you can say, of Ted Karras to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
Those are 2 big losses along that offensive line, and you have to replicate that. Whether you want to or whether you don't, you're going to be forced into replicating that. So when you look at what the Patriots are going to do to try to replicate it, obviously Ryan Bates is someone they continue to be in on, reportedly. A lot of other teams are showing interest in there as well. So a little bit of a budding bidding war. Last week, it looked like this could be an opportunity for them to snag a very good reserve offensive lineman that had the ability to start. He started at the end of the year for Buffalo when they played some of their best football. But at the same time, if you're not bringing in someone like that and you're going to have to rely on the draft, or you're going to have to rely on maybe a lesser name on free agency to come in and to man that left guard position, if you don't feel comfortable going with someone on the roster like a Will Sherman or, someone to that effect, or, like you mentioned, Yasser Durant, you mentioned Justin Herron, these guys are primarily tackles. Are they going to feel comfortable moving over to that left guard position where Joe Thuney manned that for so long and was arguably the best in the game at what he did? that's where you need the continuity, and that's what Brown
Mhm.
brings to this line. He brings
Yeah.
continuity. He brings stability. Hopefully, he'll bring good health this year. I know Trent's doing everything he can to keep himself in solid shape, but ultimately, it's going to be up to him to be able to do that. So, excellent point, Claire. And we're all glad. I don't think there's anybody that's not happy to see Trent Brown back. One of
Oh.
the great guys to cover, and just hilarious, and just being able to see him tower above everybody in training camp and at practice is really going to be something that I'm looking forward to this year as well. Folks, it's not just about the offensive line, though. The Patriots need blocking. It's arguably the most important part of the Patriots offense moving forward. But one position that's always been a staple of New England Patriots offenses is the fullback. And over the weekend, we get some interesting news along with the departure of Jakob Johnson. Jakob speaking with a German news outlet stating that the New England Patriots informed him he might not be using the fullback in 2022. Well, Claire is somewhat of a fullback expert, and we're going to get her thoughts on that subject and what it means for the Patriots moving forward in just a moment. But first, folks, wanted to take a moment just to remind you of the great folks over at Built Bar, who this show is brought to you in part by today. Built Bar is one of the great sweet treats out there, folks. But the good news is that it's not only a sweet treat. When you reach over for a candy bar, you're looking at in excess of 200, sometimes 250 calories, a lot of sugar, not a whole lot of quality energy. But if you need energy, protein, and you're looking for the same delicious taste and better than a candy bar, reach for a Built Bar. Much less calories, much more protein, and the taste, folks, is definitely through the roof. These guys always focused on the taste first, and then they figure out how to make it healthy for you. I don't know how they do it. Claire doesn't know how they do it. They just do it, and they do it better than anybody. So do yourself a favor. Reach over to built.com today and enter the promo code LOCKED15 on your next order to get 15% off. Choose some of the great flavors that they have, like mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, my personal favorite, coconut almond, salted caramel, and so much more. That's visit built.com today. Enter the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order at built.com. Patriots fans, once again, the empress of tight endage, the principle of positivity. Yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you'll see it. I'll put it out there on Twitter so you can see all of the nicknames that we've provided for her, and she deserves every single one of them. Most importantly, columnist extraordinaire for Pat's Propaganda and the host of the second best Patriots podcast out there on the Twitterverse. Look at that look. Unbelievable. You know I got to pump my own tires a little bit. Someone's got to do it. I'm kidding, folks. No, all kidding aside, a Clare Perspective, a Patriots podcast, is my favorite listen in Patriots fandom. Subscribe and you'll be hooked as well, just like I am. Claire Cooper joins me here today, the Classy one herself. Claire, in the previous segment, we talked a lot about Trent Brown and what it means to have that continuity back in the Patriots offense. But one of the most continuous positions that the Patriots have put out quality-wise, really over the last decade, has been the fullback position. Under Bill Belichick and in New England, there have been several Patriots fullbacks that have really been, top of their game. Most recently, I think everybody loves to invoke the name of James Devlin, and rightfully so. He's been a tremendous player for this organization. Obviously retired a few years ago, and after James retired, people wondered what the fullback position was going to look like. Jakob Johnson comes in from the International Pathway Program. Not a lot of people knew a whole lot about Jakob, but he really made a name for himself very early on. A lot of grit, a lot of determination shown in practice, earned him a starting job. Ultimately, it's earned him a pretty nice payday in Las Vegas. So he will be taking his talents now to the Nevada desert. And it leaves the Patriots with a hole at fullback, or really does it? Over the weekend, it was reported that Jakob had an interview, and I mentioned this heading into today's segment, that he had an interview recently with a German news outlet that said that the Patriots had informed him that his position wasn't necessarily going to be needed this year. Well, that does raise some questions. First of all, the Patriots have relied on fullbacks to be a part of their blocking game, even a weapon in the offense when they need to. And it also raises questions about some of the tight ends that are on the roster, because as you know, the H-back role as a tight end and the fullback position, can have very similar responsibilities. Not alike for like, folks, but they are similar responsibilities. Claire, when you heard about Jakob, what was your reaction, first of all, to his moving on, what it means for the fullback position, and pulling on your endless knowledge of tight endage? Are you looking at a tight end on this roster right now that might be able to fill that gap for 2022 coming up?
Well, it's very interesting that you would say that, Michael, because I have recently put out, as you will know, on PatsPropaganda.com, you will find my fullback column. So head over to PatsPropaganda.com and have a quick read. But to touch on that, I mean, I'm kind of known, as you mentioned, by a few people now as being a bit of a tight end enthusiast. I mean, I adore all aspects of football and both sides of the ball. But yeah, I have a soft spot for tight ends, and that easily translates into the fullback position. I mean, I've written about it a couple of times now so far in my, year and a half career of writing, about the Patriots. Now, Jakob Johnson did a lot as a Patriot. His strength in the run game was imperative, and he seemed to be developing as a bit of a pass catcher. But depending on what you want to believe right now, be it that he wasn't all that the Patriots are moving on from the fullback position, that Dalton Keene is the heir apparent to kind of like James Devlin or the Jakob Johnson, or even that Jonnu Smith will be utilised more in a way a fullback would line up. I mean, Jakob Johnson is now a Raider, and there isn't, a designated fullback on the Patriots roster. Just like my little bit of unrest at the O-line, there is so much time for this all to change. And I think one of the most popular kind of sounding opinions right now, definitely by some of the smarter guys in the Boston media, is the step up of Jonnu Smith. Although I know there's a little uncertainty in regards to his blocking prowess, like someone, in comparison to someone like Jakob Johnson. So Smith may need to up his value sort of with the offense in that nature. A lot would say that Smith needs to be utilised more out in the field pass catching. I mean, he had the same amount of touchdowns in 2021 for the Patriots as JC Jackson. So for his 15 million price tag, it's no wonder that fans had got unrest, in regards to him, and we're sort of looking to maybe move on from him, coming into this season as we approach it. He's a great athlete. I hope he has as much versatility as needed to really push out as that H-back kind of fullback-esque kind of role, as well as a yards after the catch kind of gaining threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you make a very, very interesting point about Jonnu, and I'm glad that you mentioned his blocking ability, because this is something we saw him do last year on more than one occasion. Line up as an inline blocker, really end up becoming more of a factor in the blocking game than he was in the passing game, and this surprised so many people. You and I as well. We talked about, when's Jonnu going to have that breakout game, and I know that irritates you as much as it irritates me, probably more. As a tight end enthusiast, you're probably even more taken aback by that and really angry or upset about it, because I mean, let's face it, we're talking about a player with all pro caliber. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that he's at a Kelsey or a Kittle level at that point, but Jonnu is a very capable tight end that really can be a dynamic force in this offense. And conversation for another day. I think that his presence and his emergence as a red zone target may help to alleviate the fact that the Patriots may, have some hidden gems on this roster that might be able to help their pass catching ability. But again, I digress. We're not going to go there today. I think you make an interesting point on Jonnu and on Dalton as well. Look, Dalton played the H-back role at Virginia Tech. He did it very well. The question about him is going to be his health, assimilation into the Patriots system. If he can prove that he can assimilate and stay healthy, I think he's got a shot to be able to do it as an H-back and maybe even align as a fullback. So I think that's something very interesting to keep an eye on. One also thing to keep an eye on, folks, is it might not just be tight endage that fills that H-back or fullback role. While H-backs are traditionally tight ends, the running backs and the wide receivers may have something to say about that as well. And Claire helps us clarify, like what I did there, the option of the Patriots either repackaging or re-imaging the fullback position, but not quite eliminating it. Am I putting words in her mouth? Well, we'll find out in one moment. But first, folks, today's episode is brought to you by the great folks over at Athletic Greens. They put out a fantastic product that I literally use every day. Folks, let's face it, we all want more energy. The days are getting longer. We want to maximize our health to enjoy the upcoming spring and summer months. I started taking their AG1 product for that reason, and I absolutely love it. One delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, and I'm already enjoying better gut health, more energy, greater focus, and folks, you will too. You always love to take a multivitamin to make sure that you're maximizing your body's ability. Tons of people take some kinds of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high quality ingredients that your body is actually going to absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's the one thing that you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, folks. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it even easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Patriots fans, once again, I am absolutely honored to be joined by the Countess of Claz herself, Miss Clare ClazzyClare Cooper, columnist extraordinaire for PatsPropaganda.com. Very relevant today. Check out PatsPropaganda.com right now. Well, maybe not right now, but as soon as you finish listening or watching this episode, check out her great column on the Fullback. We're talking about that today here with Clare. In the previous segment, we talked about a lot of what the Patriots may do in terms of utilizing the H-back to kind of take away what the fullback did in 2021 with Jakob Johnson now off to Las Vegas. But you hinted going into the break, Clare, that it's not just tight endage that is always responsible for taking on these roles. Running backs, even wideouts, can come in, throw a block or two, a line in the backfield, be that type of fullback H-back role. Take that on and help to really move this offense forward. I know you have some thoughts on that. If the Patriots were to move away from the fullback position, and there were reports out there, and I even wrote about this over the weekend on for Sports Illustrated, that they are transitioning away from that traditional fullback role. How do you see this being filled by someone other than an H-back at the tight end position?
I think a lot of it is to do with labels. And as I think I mentioned in my column, Belichick isn't really much of a labels guy. I mean, we don't even kind of know in regards to coaching. He doesn't really kind of put the labels on things in regards to that, give them titles and stuff. So I think maybe that the label of fullback might not be there in New England, but I don't think the job of fullback isn't necessarily in New England. And as we mentioned previously, I am kind of quite an advocate for Smith kind of, should we say, breaking out now and developing into kind of like tongue-in-cheek there, into kind of like more of a H-back role, really getting the versatility out of him, getting the value for money out of him. But there's also like a flip side, as you mentioned, the flip side of that. There's this increased use of more power backs in regards to running backs. I mean, the Patriots had Fournette in for a meeting kind of workout recently now, and he's definitely one of the more powerful of the running backs. I mean, we know he's since gone to the books. It was maybe a bit of a test of water so that he could get more money. We appreciate that. But Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are in that kind of power back kind of mold. And if that is the case, then they could be utilized kind of with the blocking. I mean, the Patriots could really get in their use out of that whole 22 personnel package that Claire really wants to see. And for anyone who, like me, he's still kind of learning their whole football stuff, the 22 personnel package is where they line up 2 running backs and 2 tight ends with one wide receiver. Now, the 23 personnel is a 2 running backs, 3 tight end lineup, and I am just waiting for that one. And when I say that, with 3 true tight ends, I know last season they utilized Onwenu a little in the kind of sub tight end role, but I want him focusing his O-line duties, which kind of ties back into like the beginning of the show, really. I mean, there is still a lot to figure out for the Patriots, kind of not just on offense, but on defense as well. And there's still plenty of holes to fill, hopefully with like youth and with speed, but there's still time for that to happen, and that's key at this moment. What we do know is the lack of Johnson may be significant in regard to the fullback role. It isn't officially filled on the roster, and you know who can and who maybe needs to step up. in that kind of powerful blocking play. Still possible in New England. And I think that, in my opinion, it will still happen. They may not have an FB there, but they will still have guys that take on that role, those, undergo those tasks that maybe Johnson would. They just don't have that FB next to their name kind of thing. But I mean,
Right.
the fullback role isn't going away. The role itself isn't going away, especially with the way the game is played with the fullback on the roster. I don't feel it's going to be going away completely for the Patriots. Again, I always kind of say this in each episode. I'll say something that is, in my opinion, this won't happen or this will happen. And then I have to admit that it probably will be the opposite, because Coach Bill, I reckon, has this thing of just liking to prove me wrong. I just think he's, maybe it's just his pleasurable pastime nowadays. But no, in all seriousness, things are developing. I mean, the game is always evolving, and as much as people think that maybe Coach Bill isn't, he really is. And I think he's just been a bit more sticky ninja about it than people maybe realize. But I think the whole point is, right now, it's just to keep a positive kind of open outlook about what's going to happen. For me, the tight end fullback-ish enthusiast, I don't think that the role itself is going away. Possibly, as I said, the FB might not be there on that roster, but for all you kind of fullback enthusiasts out there, I don't think you need to be too worried at this, at least right now. The Patriots have got guys on, even already on their roster, already in their system, already there, ready, who can utilize these skills that they need in regard to that sort of fullback H-back situation. So it's a case of, don't be too worried at this stage that your little FB isn't there on the roster, because I think you're going to be sorted out, not to worry.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the fact that the fullback position is not indeed going away. And I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, oh yeah, goodbye, that's it, 2-back sets, that's all we need. Well, if you're aligning in a 2-back set, like you said, with the 22 personnel, and I think you explained that perfectly, you're essentially lining a fullback in there. It may not be the fullback role, it may not be traditional FB, like you said, that next to their name, but you have a you have a roster, I should say, with multiple people on it that can fill this role. You can align Dalton Keene in that role. You can align Jonnu Smith in that role. You can put someone even like a Divine Ozigbo, and I know that you mentioned him in your piece, and I think that's a very interesting point. Everybody's looking at him as, oh, this is just going to be a roster filler, maybe a practice squad guy. Divine is very tough, and he's someone that caught my eye last year when the Patriots brought him in as a running back option on the practice squad. He's going to get a chance to compete for a spot on this roster. And if there's one thing we know that New England and Bill Belichick are very much committed to, it's playing the players on the field that they feel give them the best chance to win. They're not worried about free agent wish lists. They're not worried about rankings, media member rankings, whatever. They're worried about what they see on the field. And if Divine Ozigbo gives them the opportunity to give them another option in that realm, he's going to be able to do it. Another guy to watch, Ty Montgomery, a guy they just picked up. He played some of that role with the New York Jets. He played some of it with the New Orleans Saints. This is a guy that right now I think can be intriguing heading into training camp, because he has the ability to do so much, not just as a return specialist in special teams, but also to play the running back position, to play wide out. He's capable of being that Swiss Army knife in the Patriots' weaponry arsenal. He's not going to be your number one option. He's probably not going to be your number 2 or number 3 option. But if he's out there on the field, it keeps the defense guessing. And that's why it's important to remember that while the Patriots may not carry a traditional fullback on the roster this year, folks, I think they're re-imaging that position. But as my good friend will tell you right here, it's not going away anytime soon. Claire, what can I say? You always bring the wisdom and counsel here on Wednesday. You level the playing field. You stirred the drink, and that's exactly what we expect you to do here on Locked On Patriots. No stirring of the drink until we're done recording. Remember, this is a family show. We don't encourage that. All kidding aside, folks, please, from the bottom of my heart, I highly recommend everything that Claire does here when it comes to coverage of your New England Patriots. Follow all of her written work at PatsPropaganda.com, as well as the great work that's being done by the entire team over there at PatsProp. Some of the great guys and girls in this business have been attached to that blog, that name, always, in honor of Mike Dussault, who does a tremendous job for Patriots.com. But that's exactly where we found his talents, and they continue to take the ball and they continue to carry it gracefully. I say it all the time. I continue to say it, and I will. Please, by all means, subscribe to A Clare Perspective, a Patriots podcast. Claire puts out a tremendous listen. Some of the great guests that you'll find anywhere in Patriots media have joined her on the opposite end of the microphone. I just mentioned our good friend Deuce. He was her guest recently. Mike Giardi of the NFL Network, Karen Garigian of the Boston Herald, Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston. Claire has interviewed them all, and she's done it with a style all her own. And really, just the back and forth between her and her guests is phenomenal. And as always, you can catch her each and every week here on Locked On Patriots every Wednesday as she brings the Claz back to Locked On Patriots. Claire, before I let you go, I've kind of pumped your tires a little bit, deservedly so, but I want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners what they can expect in the coming days and weeks from the great pen and the great voice of ClazzyClare Cooper.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. And yes, thank you for pumping my tires there. Just to quickly recap, yes, you'll find me on PatsPropaganda.com, folks. And my recent article on fullbacks went up this morning, so you can catch a load of that. My episode with, as you said, Mike Deuce went out on Tuesday morning, sorry. So yeah, A Clare Perspective, the 28th episode with Mike Deuce is out now, and the week previously was with Mike Giardi. So I hope you guys can catch up on and listen to that as well. So that's pretty much where you'll find me, and you will also find me each and every week on One Patriots Place with the lovely Steve Balistreri and Thomas Murphy for E2G Sports. So yeah, and then I'm here on Wednesday, so I'm it's quite busy really. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, trying to What off season? What off season, folks?
No days off, Claire. When you cover the New England Patriots, there are no days off. And
I have
someday, yep, exactly. And someday here on Locked On Patriots, we'll get high tech enough that maybe I can get a Bill Belichick quote in the background, him yelling "No days off." I can have that going. But in the meantime, you'll have to settle for my terrible impression of Bill Belichick. All kidding aside, folks, we definitely here at Locked On Patriots appreciate you continuing to make Locked On a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. And again, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to, download, and follow the Locked On Patriots podcast on platforms such as Spotify, the Odyssey app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure that you continue to stay locked into Locked On Patriots. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube so you can send it to the internet and watch Locked On Patriots on YouTube each and every day. In the meantime, continue. Stay safe. Stay well. I thank my esteemed colleague, my esteemed guest today here on Locked On Patriots, ClazzyClare Cooper. On behalf of her, myself, thank you so much for listening today. Have a great day, everyone.